We're going to be looking at meaning making today. I've been absolutely obsessed with this topic since I was a moody teenager. I'll let you know a secret. I have a relationship with the river next to my house. It helped me through the grieving process of my first marriage. It's like a drug, resentment, but it doesn't help. There's no one solution, but I would suggest a 4-factor reconnection model. Do you like my model? It's got 4 factors. Okay, as I was saying there, very politely for everyone, we're going to be looking at meaning making today. I've been absolutely obsessed with this topic probably since I was a moody teenager and I discovered Nietzsche. Okay, if you're American and you can't speak, that's Nietzsche. All right, if you're German and you can actually pronounce it, well, thank you, but don't scare us with your language. So I discovered this guy who said that we don't know what's going on. God is dead. We killed him. What are we going to do? What did he mean by that? He was essentially addressing the problem of modernity. I'm going to lay out what that problem is in depressing detail over the next 20 minutes. 20 minutes, I'm going to black pill you guys. 20 minutes from now, you're going to be like, I hate life. This is not worth living. Please don't leave at that point, because after that, we're going to look at some potential ways of addressing what other people smarter than me have called the meaning crisis. Yes, I listened to all 60 hours of philosopher John Vervaeke's meaning crisis theories, so you don't have to. I'm adding dick jokes and condensing it. You're welcome, Alison. You're welcome. John's a very nice man, actually. I've had him on the podcast. He's very clever, but he's very verbose. And a lovely gentleman. So I've been obsessed with this. I spent 3 months with a group of people working my way through that. But as I said, this started for me really as a teenager when I said, what's the point? Anyone have that moment as a teenager? Did you have that moment when you went, what's the point? I actually held a razor blade to my wrist when I was 13 and thought, I'm not sure if this is, oh, trigger warning. I'm going to trigger the out of you. Okay, over. So 13 was probably contemplated for the first time. I thought, what's the point? Yeah, by 14, I discovered drugs, alcohol, and girls. Didn't look back for at least. Anyone discover drugs, alcohol, and girls? Or Italian boys? Make your mind. It's all good. Yeah, I thought, you know what I really need is hedonism. There's no meaning in life. I'm just going to snort life out of the asshole of the crack whore of existence. And I tried that approach thoroughly. I've done that experiment, not literally, but metaphorically, I've done that experiment so you don't have to. All right. So we're going to be talking about nihilism, hedonism, narcissism, the horsemen of the meaning apocalypse. What else? Limbic capitalism. I'll probably get into that. The state we're in. It's going to be pretty depressing before it gets better. Still think you're in the right place? Okay. Can I have an enthusiastic American, like, whoop, yeah, hell yeah. Imagine you're not a cynical European. You're an American. You've had a couple of beers. You're at the college soccer match. You're like, whoa. Yeah, and you're up for it. I want a bit more enthusiasm here. It's fucking winter. It's 6 p.m. It's dark outside. I got snowed on today. Anyway, good. So let me see. What are you here for? I'm also, thank you very much. I think so too. So how would you summarize the problem of meaning? It's different ways of looking at it, right? One of them was Nietzsche's way, which is basically to say, in a scientific materialist world, there's just stuff. That's the sort of things knocking around. There's just stuff out there, materialism. Yeah. If there's just stuff, how do we have any values? How do we get from an is to an ought? This is an old philosophical dilemma. How do we know what's good? Maybe, we could sort of, what do? We just say, well, you do what you want to do, but that doesn't really work. Because if I see you putting a kitten on a spike, I'm like, no, don't do that. That's against my values. Don't put the kitten on the spike. I like kittens. And then you're like, but why? Why would I not put the kitten on the spike? Why is that reasonable? And we could get into sort of relativism, right? This is where we find ourselves today. We have modernism. Everything is just material. The modern mind is not religious. We don't have faith. We can retreat to fundamentalism, but we don't really believe it, do we? We don't really believe Virgin Mary was a virgin. mistranslation from the Hebrew as an aside. But anyway, we don't really believe it. We think she probably had an affair, and then Joseph found out about it, and she said, "You know what? Actually, it was God," and blagged it. We don't really believe Moses parted the Red Sea. That's a hard thing to believe. We might say, it's a story and it's a metaphor and it's about the archetypes and it's about the unconscious being parted. But yeah, we've lost some magic, haven't we? Most of your ancestors, by the way, were Paleolithic. You know this? Most of your ancestors believed that everything was alive, that everything had spirit, everything had meaning, that every hill, every river was a story, that was an ancestor, was a god. This is Shinto still sort of has this, right? In Japan, they'll gaze at a cherry blossom because it has a sense of beauty and meaning in life. So modernity smashed all that, didn't it? It said, actually, there's just stuff and there's not really any point to anything. And what does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us in what I call the desert of modernity. So the desert of modernity, we go, there's no point in anything. And there's no community anymore, right? There's no community. Do you know the names of your neighbors? Who knows the names of all their neighbors? Some of you do, not many of you. Okay. Who has the same values as their neighbors? It used to be an extended family, right? By the way, I'm going to say some things you'll think are going to be left wing, some things that are going to seem right wing. I don't give a shit. It's whether they're true or not. All right. So just put your politics aside. Nobody cares. Americans, you've got Trump to deal with for 4 years. Good luck. Have fun. Okay. So we're putting our little political, actually, shut up. No one cares. We're looking at it philosophically, not politically. So meaning crisis. So domicide, John Vervaeke calls this, the idea the home has been killed, the killing of home, domicide. How has it been killed? 4 levels. The body, this is the home. We're dissociated from the body. Yeah, so our basic sense of connection is destroyed. We're disconnected from community, from belonging. Yeah. And you could have, different possibilities on this. You could have a left-wing possibility that says, we've been split off from each other by capitalism because capitalism wants unique consumer units. That's true, by the way. That's true. Okay. There's no community anywhere anymore. Or right-wing point of view where you say, actually, that tribe matters and mass immigration destroys that because your neighbors like different things and worship different gods and speak different languages. And that doesn't fucking work. Okay. Look up the grooming gangs in England if you think it does. It doesn't work to have people to have no sense of tribe. So we need to incorporate both of those views if we're to really understand how community has been smashed. Ecocide, our connection to the land has been smashed. So you can be a pagan like Helen, you can try and redevelop that, but most of you don't have intimate relationships with Hank obviously is a mountain, if you've seen his square, but other than Hank, everybody else doesn't have intimate relationships like most indigenous people have without romanticizing them, because they were shit in a number of ways, with trees and rivers and things around us. And the idea of killing the gods, we don't have the sacred. What do you worship? Someone smarter than me once said, we all worship something. Yeah. What do you worship? People worship their football teams, don't they? There's a replacement for tribe there. I'm on team blue. I'm on team red. It doesn't fucking mean anything though, does it? So it's empty as shit. Yeah. Actually, I'm a Republican. I'm a Democrat. That's my team. It doesn't mean anything anymore. So pretty stark, isn't it? This is the situation we find ourselves in. What do you worship? What has ultimate meaning for you? Let me ask you a question. I said, I was in Belgium teaching a year or two ago. Have you ever been to Belgium? It's like France, but less sexy. Good chocolate, though. I was in Belgium and I said, would you die for Belgium? And people just laughed. They laughed out loud. They said, that's ridiculous. Belgium doesn't mean anything. It's just a mess. It doesn't have a value. Well, it used to. The King of Belgium fought in the trenches in World War One. Did you know that? About 100 years ago. One of the last kings to actually fight in a war. Wouldn't that be nice if kings fought their own fucking wars? Yeah. So back in the day, the King of Belgium was fighting in the trenches because Belgium meant something to him, even though it's invented by the British as a buffer zone between the Dutch and the French. But let's not go there. Anyway, so what would you die for? This is one of the questions of meaning. What would you live for, right? It's kind of two sides of the same thing. Most people can't answer that question now. So what are we left with? We go, well, I don't really want to die because it's scary, isn't it? It's existentially threatening being a human being. So I don't really think there's an afterlife. I don't really believe in that very strongly. I've got some weird hodgepodge of new age beliefs that I've thrown together myself from the internet. That'll work. I've thrown together all these new age beliefs because I have to believe in something divine and there's some still mystery left. And whenever I see beauty, I have some inkling maybe there's more to the world than is obvious. I have sometimes when I make love or when I dance, I feel like there's something. So there must be something other than just material possessions and money. And I feel like I'm being lied to by consumerism. You are, get your tinfoil hat out. You are being lied to for profit and control. This is absolutely the case on many levels. But you still have that inkling that there's something special and divine and magic, right? So you go, what do I do with that? And here's a few things you can do with it. Invent a load of bullshit that's new age and not submit to anything because you're the center of the fucking world. Because when you take out God and meaning and spirit, what's left in the middle is a big hole that you put your fucking ego in. And consumerism loves that because it can sell that ego a whole bunch of shit. Have you noticed it's an iPhone and not a Wii phone? Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? Consumerism says you're fucking amazing. It's a narcissistic, psychopathic culture that doesn't, so we don't surrender to anything. That's what Islam means, surrender. I'm going to say mean things about Islam. Oh, unfortunate, might get a death threat. Islam means surrender. That's one of the beautiful things about Islam, that we surrender to something. Yeah, this is when we pray, we go in and we bow our heads. What do you bow down to? Well, one of the other answers is romantic love. It's a lot of pressure to put on that fucking girl from Birmingham, though, isn't it? It's a lot. It's a lot. Like even an arrogant Italian can't handle that kind of pressure. I should know. The pressure we put on our spouse, which says you are the meaning of life. Yeah, you are my everything. My all those romantic love stories that are pushed on us that we're sort of a bit too cynical to believe now, but we still have in our heart. That's a lot of pressure to say you have to be the source of all beauty and divinity and meaning. Yeah, and take the trash out, please, because the recycling needs doing. It's a lot of pressure, isn't it? Anyone find that you put all that pressure on your partner and they're like, I'm just a person with tits. I can't do all that. I'm pretty, but I'm nice, but these are just fat deposits. It's not the meaning of life. So you say, okay, what am I going to put my meaning on? How about kids? I mean, that's kind of nice, right? Like survival, we're wired, evolutionary. It's kind of grandkids actually in terms of evolution, but we're wired to that. And people aren't doing that anymore. We're like pandas in a zoo that won't fuck to save our species. The birth rates all across the Western world are plummeting. That's why we need mass migration to continue consumerism and capitalism. Birth rates are plummeting. Koreans are going to be extinct soon, right? It's not just the West, actually. It's all the developed Asian countries. Because why would we have children when we don't believe in anything? What would we reproduce for? And then if we have children, we make them precious and special. And we say, you're the only thing in life. You're who mother lives for. And how does it feel if mother lives for you? It's a little bit much, isn't it? It's a lot. So we're left with nihilism. And what do? We chase after hedonism. Because if I'm the center of the universe, I might as well have a nice time, right? I might as well take jokes. But I just had Anna Lemke on the podcast, who's a dopamine expert, and she says the pursuit of pleasure inevitably leads to pain. This is a neurological reality, something spiritual people have known for years, which is why Buddhist monks don't talk about blowjobs and cocaine very much, right? So actually, the tantric ones, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. The endless pursuit of pleasure always leads to pain. I've done that with hundreds of Russian girls. I am boasting a little bit. I've done that with multiple class A substances. I've tried all the combinations of breath work and fasting and amphetamines at the same time. None of it works, okay? If you're like 25 and you haven't done the experiment yet, I'm not going to not recommend it, but ultimately it won't work. Hedonism isn't enough. When I give you an example, I have a friend of mine is dying of cancer currently, and his bones are rotting, and he texts me in the middle of the night because he's screaming in agony. Do you think consumerism and hedonism will be enough to get him through the night? It's not. Luckily, he has very deep spiritual beliefs, and that's some solace to him. Some solace. Yeah. When your bones are rotting from the inside out, which, by the way, awaits half of us. Half of us here are going to have dementia, cancer, terrible deaths at some point, and we pretend that's not real, right? We push death away. We pretend that we can, if we just consume enough, or by the way, the sort of middle class equivalent. Yeah, you're like, actually, I'm not into consumerism. I don't have a flash car. It's experiential consumerism. I've done the ayahuasca trips in Peru, and I've done this in Bali, and I've done all the yoga and the meditation, and I've read all the books, and I'm terribly fucking clever. That's the middle class equivalent. It's the same shit. It's the same shit with a different package. Still consumerism. Oh, nihilism. Hedonism, narcissism, that's what we're left with. Life itself starts to look less appealing. People stop breeding. Have you noticed society's become a bit of a death cult? Have you noticed that? We celebrate non-reproductive sex. Now, of course, if you're gay and you want to have non-reproductive sex, I get it. That's fine. I'm not destroying your lifestyle or saying you're a bad person. But it can't be the norm, can it? It can't be the norm that we celebrate non-reproductive sex because then we won't be here in a generation. That can't be everyone. Yeah, it's a little bit strange that we're encouraging children to castrate themselves and chop their breasts off. That's a little bit strange, is it not? Does it not leave a slight distaste in your mouth? And you can still be kind to people, and you can still treat your friend that's from Berlin and likes to dress in a dress, and that's their business, and it's nothing to be, mean about. But isn't it a bit strange when it's becoming the norm? Isn't it a bit strange when child suicide is a thing? That's a thing now. That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. Isn't it a bit strange when over 50% of young American women are medicated for mental health problems? Over 50%. Over half of, I've always said Americans are crazy, don't get me wrong, but over half of you are like medicated for crazy. Yeah. And don't you just feel it when you're looking at the culture and you see people who seem unwell, that life itself is not celebrated, that we're not celebrating life anymore. We're celebrating death. We're leaning towards death. Doesn't the taste of a diet drink that has a chemical in remind you of that? Doesn't the taste of the entertainment you're fed taste like plastic? I could be wrong, but I have thought about some of this stuff quite deeply. How you guys doing? I told you it would be depressing 20 minutes in. Is anyone feeling like I can't take it anymore, Mark? Yes, that's the honest feeling of late stage capitalism. That's the honest feeling of modernity. It's like there's nothing to live for. None of it means anything. The Unabomber. If you've never read the Unabomber, by the way, I think we're past the 10-minute point on YouTube. We can get away with it. Ted Kaczynski says a lot of very interesting things here. A lot of very interesting things about this topic. Uncle Ted, we call him in right wing circles. So yes, we're over socialized. He calls it. We're in a cage. We don't want to breed because we don't have the sweet air of freedom. Yeah. If we look at this up to date as well, if we bring in the technology, what's the technology there for? Have you noticed we're surfing the internet? SERF. Yeah, we're living in what's his face? He's got a Greek name. I can't pronounce it. Yanis, what's his face? Leftist from Greek, used to be the finance minister. He calls it neo-feudalism. Every time we go on Uber, every time we go on Amazon, we're paying a tithe to the very rich, right? But it's not just a feudalism like before where they own us and take a tax from us. It's also they're fucking with our soul. They're destroying our attention, and attention is the gateway to a divine. Anyone check their phone in the last 20 minutes? Oh, now you're itching, aren't you? Because there's a phone somewhere near you and you can feel the fucking itch because something's going on Instagram or Facebook or whatever the drug of your choice is. And that is itching you right now. So you can't actually stay attention to someone that spent fucking 500 hours condensing something into an hour for you. Yeah? Feel that itch? That's your mind being broken by consumer capitalism. That's the limbic capitalism is a term that one thinker uses that keeps us all in a fight or flight response. So we can't be in rest, digest, and connect. We can't get to wisdom. We can't get to spirit. We can't get to each other. We can't get to the body, and we can't get to spirit. We can't get to the body. We can't get to each other, and we can't get to spirit. Why? Because our attention is smashed. We're kept in fight or flight. Fight, flight, or grasping, if we look at it from a Buddhist point of view. Yes, I've gone from Uncle Ted, the Unabomber, to the Buddha in less than 2 minutes. Damn, it's good. Okay, so the Buddha said we have these two main forces that push us around: craving, desire. We don't talk about that for some reason in the West. We talk about fight or flight, but not craving and desire. They're the two forces, and there's probably more craving and desire. Anna Lemke's Neuroscience and Dopamine, well worth a look. She's just had her on the podcast. I did get out a kinky riding whip as a balance of the pleasure pain balance, which did shock her slightly, but we had a good interview. I think we got on well. Okay, so technology is smashing our attention, making us addicted, making us distracted, making us unable to connect with our bodies, which is the gateway to community, which is the gateway to spirit, nature. These things are all combined. I've got a slide I can show you at some point. It's my last remaining drug. I've given up social media. I'm much nicer for it. Much nicer for it. I highly recommend it if you haven't already. I'm still on it, giving it to you guys, but I'm not on it myself. How much of entertainment is about war? Like I spoke to a kid the other day who spends 3 hours playing a game where he pretends to shoot people a day. Like I've got friends in Ukraine who are trying to not do that. They would rather not spend 3 hours a day shooting people. But that's his entertainment. That's a lot of his social status comes from being the sixth best Fortnite player in his school. His words, not mine. Yeah, if you don't know what Fortnite is, it's one of these games where you have to shoot people. You know, some people say the Greeks kicked it off, dividing the good, the true, and the beautiful. Another way of thinking about it is postmodernity, our state now, where even modernity is looked at skeptically, is the good, the true, and the beautiful all get smashed. What do I mean by that? The true. Have you ever heard someone say my truth? Have you heard that? Those people are okay. There's no such thing as my truth. It doesn't make sense. It's your opinion. It's your aesthetic. It's not your truth. It can't be the case. Like, reality exists. I'm literally doing a podcast now to say reality is a thing. I never thought I'd have to do it. That's relativism, smashing the idea of truth, which sends us all crazy because you can't actually live with the idea that there is no truth, right? You have to say this is a pen and not a chipmunk. Yeah. You realistically, you have to have the idea of truth. You can have sort of postmodernism light that says, well, we have perspectives on the truth, but the idea there is no truth is nonsense. There's no goodness. Well, that's just you're just saying that, man. That's just like your opinion, man. There's no right, no wrong, is there? I mean, if you want to kittens, that's up to you, man. And it's all culturally relative, and that's their culture to rape small boys in Afghanistan. And if no, not okay. By the way, true fact, culture of raping small boys in Afghanistan. There's a word for it. Okay, true fact. I don't want that in my country. I don't want that in my town. I don't want that in my community. We have to make a stand on some morality somewhere. Yes, we have to say some things are good or bad because we act as if some things are good or bad. So we have to have some sense of that. Not this postmodern, well, everyone's got their own right and wrong. And who are you to say what's right and wrong? Stop killing kittens. Can we agree on that? Torturing kittens is bad. Can we agree on one thing? Oh, beauty. Everything's ugly. Have you noticed that? Not me. Mwah. Okay. But have you noticed the world's pretty ugly? What's the most beautiful building in your town? I bet it wasn't built in the last 20 years. What's pretty? Do you think people dress well now? Do you see how casually most people dress? I mean, you see little bits of beauty, right? There's always beauty in the world. The idea that beauty doesn't exist, everyone's a 10. No, they're not. Okay. The idea that you can't be ugly. No. I take the idea aesthetics is a moral responsibility. Aesthetics points to goodness. Aesthetics, like every tribal people in the world believe in aesthetics and adornment. Josh Schreier did a great podcast on this if you want to look it up. Every tribal people believes in beauty because beauty points us to the shiny sacred. It points us to something. When you see a baby and it's beautiful, or a beautiful hot Brazilian girl dancing, or an Italian man in a suit who's well dressed, or an Italian cathedral that was built for over 200 years, you see the beauty in these things and it ennobles the spirit. It's not just, oh, I like that. It's uplifting to be in, I don't know, Bled Lake in Slovenia or the Cologne Cathedral. This is uplifting in a spiritual way. Okay, so how do we find meaning? How do we find some meaning? What points us towards meaning? I've got my potential solutions, but let's hear yours. I say anyone who thinks they've got this worked out is a liar, right? There's not like the solution. This is something I'm desperately been trying to figure out in my life since I was a teenager. Yeah. What do you think an answer is? Hopefully together we can come up with something. I'm actually interested in your input at this point because I think we desperately need an answer to this because there's so much drug addiction, so much suicide, so many deaths of despair. I feel like modernity is a car that's been driving towards a wall for the last 300 years and we just fucking hit the wall. It's like there's a critical mass. Like I could carry 60 kilos on my back. I could carry 100 kilos, but there's a point where my back would just break. 200, whatever. Does it make sense? I feel like we've psychologically and emotionally hit that point. And it's confusing because we live in the most materialistically successful society that's ever been. And that's not nothing, is it? Who likes cappuccinos and iPhones and texting your friend and being on Zoom and EasyJet to Spain? I love all that shit. I love it. We're the most successful technological society ever in human history. Western culture is superior to any of the alternatives by far. On top of that, we have the best human rights of any culture in human history. Who's a woman? Do you want to go to another culture? No, you don't. Would you like to live in the Arab world? No. Would you like maybe to go back in time to the 15th century? No. Who's a gay guy? Jim with that jumper must be. Okay, is there a period of human history it was better to be gay? Not many. You might be able to find a little bit here and there, but generally, if I was gay, I'd want to be born in fucking now. So there's brilliant things to modernity too. brilliant things to modernity, technologically and culturally. But we're the psychologically and emotionally and spiritually, I would say at a stretch, the most unsuccessful culture in human history. America has a higher percentage of people in jail than any other culture that's ever lived. Our deaths of suicide are greater than any other lives. Elders are abandoned at a level that's like never before. Yeah, we kill children at a level like no other culture that's ever lived. Okay, these are not small things. We're not looking at America right now. Pan back, pan back. We're not doing the culture wars. We're doing Socrates and Nietzsche and the next 2,000 years. It's way bigger than your little culture wars. Okay, we're not making America great again. We're making humanity great again. So what might we do? What might we do? That whole little cultural thing, oh, blue team, oh, red team, that's a tiny little battle allowed within an Overton window that's this fucking big when the possibilities are this big. Yeah, it's like you guys fight each other and not the fucking people who are actually running the world. Yeah, these are issues you're allowed to argue about. Let's go way bigger than that, way more interesting than that. All right, reconnection. There's no one solution, but I would suggest a 4-factor reconnection model. Do you like my model? It's got 4 factors. This will help you think about it. It's nice and clear. As I said, no one person has all the answer, and this is very tentative. But where do we need to reconnect? I'm not going to not say the body, am I? Why? Because the body helps with all the others. So the basic disconnection is to the body. So coming back to the body, and again, we are living the best time to be embodied. We live in the best time to be embodied. You can get so much embodiment knowledge for free on the internet. We gave away 666 podcasts. We did episode 666 last night, didn't we, Helen? Yes, there's so much good stuff, so many good teachers. I could do Japanese martial arts in the morning, Indian yoga in the afternoon, and Korean tantric sex in the evening. I just made that up, but doesn't it sound appealing? Anyway, we're so lucky in terms of what we have access to today. We're so lucky. Okay, reconnection to community. This is harder. We have to build those communities online and in person. You have to, everything from saying hello to your neighbors. My neighbor who walks his dog, I was talking to for a year. Guess what his name is? Graham. It turns out it's not his name. His name is Graham Mark Walsh. What the fuck? Okay, this is my neighbor Graham. He's got a nice Rottweiler that I'm friends with. So make talking to your neighbors, creating online groups, right? Creating groups of people that have shared interests that you can go deeply with. I have an online philosophy group. I have an online men's group. We do stuff at Embodiment Unlimited, of course, around that. Okay, but there's online possibilities. But I think there's no substitute for in-person community. What does that look like where you are? I don't know. It looks different in different places. I think some countries are better than others. Southern Europe's way better than Western Europe. And Western Europe, I think, is better than the fucking car park that is the United States. Okay. When you're in Italy or Spain and you see like young people hanging out with old people, eating together, having ice cream in the town square, you go, there's something in the culture here around community that isn't totally bankrupt and sold off, you know? So some of those things are regional. I think we have to rethink that. I don't know the answer. I'll probably start a cult, as I said, if I tried. But I do think we need to seriously think about what does community in person look like. And I don't think we're lost. I see lots of people doing cool experiments. Like I spent some time in Portugal, and there's like Tamera where they all have sex, and there's another place where they all dance, and there's another place where they all meditate together. And then people are doing all these cool experiments and living together like they did in the 60s. And I think that's really fucking cool. It's really cool that we're starting to, and there's all these technologies like I don't know, circling and interpersonal relating and all kinds of, acro yoga. I was speaking to Jason Niemer, the founder of acro yoga, ways of connecting and ways of doing things together that are really profound, right? So it's like we're rethinking what that looks like. We do need to integrate left and right politically. So those of you who are getting like, actually, I'm American and I'm triggered and I have an opinion, fucking put that down. Okay, there's a reason they call it 2 wings. A bird with 1 wing is rubbish. Imagine all the people on the right, which by the way is 90% of your ancestors, 90% of the world, and 50% of your country. Imagine they were just talking total shit and you're right and they're just stupid and bad. How arrogant is that position? Yeah, maybe they've got something. I've become way more conservative now. I'm barely having threesomes with dolphins or unicorns. There's things to integrate. Equally, if you're like from the conservative right and you think sex is sinful and other ethnicities are evil, you might want to fucking chill out a bit with that. Yeah. So there's things we can integrate. The polarization is unhelpful. It is unhelpful. Okay, connecting with nature. I'll let you know a secret. I'm a fucking hippie too. Okay, spend several hours a day in nature. Develop. I have a relationship with the river next to my house. It helped me through the grieving process of my first marriage. It's somewhere I throw rose petals in devotionally on a daily basis. Don't tell anyone, okay? Because it's embarrassing. The key emotion to being British is embarrassment. It's like, oh, I'm terribly sorry, we've invaded your country. It's also the key emotion of cynicism, the key aspect of cynicism, which stops us from profoundly connecting with the divine, is worship. Yeah. By the way, I'm not going to make you do it now, but get on your fucking knees. Yeah, get on your fucking knee. You're so important. You can't get on your knees. Like you see Indian people who can put their heads on the floor and lay flowers at the feet of Krishna. I employ Indian tech people who are super modern, but they have this beautiful devotional quality that's still in their culture. We're like, no, I'm the boss of me. I'm an American. I'm an English person. I'm a Frenchman, even fucking worse. Yeah, it's like, no, like that devotional quality to nature. That's a key aspect. And you'll see that even like British people walking in the Peak District at the weekend. There's some devotional quality. I mean, the Japanese still definitely have it when they spend, 2 hours staring at Mount Fuji or the cherry blossoms. Like it's in our being. Most of your ancestors were Paleolithic. Most of your ancestors were animist. If you're not studying Josh Schry by now, you should be. The Emerald is a better podcast than mine. And he's an amazing teacher. So that's part of the puzzle. I think his way of looking at it is available to the modern mind. We're all part of a weird, narcissistic, psychopathic death cult called modernity. And I am in recovery from it in the same way as I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol. Moving on. Resentment doesn't help. I learned that in sobriety, Resentment doesn't help. Doesn't help, resentment. Feels good. It's like a drug, resentment, but it doesn't help. So hating people isn't the answer. Bit of a hippie. Okay, last, reconnecting to spirit, some sense of meaning, some sense of something bigger than you. In AA, in 12 step, they call it a higher power. By the way, I'm long term sober, 19 years sober from drugs and alcohol, more or less. And everyone, you're welcome. I did it for me, Sheila, don't worry, not for you. It's not America. We don't need to get enthusiastic applause about it. So in recovery, you have to have a higher power, because if you don't, you put yourself at the center of the universe and then you drink. It's just some weird thing. We need God, whatever that name is. Some people's higher powers like music or love or spirit. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to become Jewish or something. Hell no, fucking the end of my penis is not having that. Okay. So you need something. And I think everyone's like an alcoholic now. Alcoholics were sort of the prophets of modernity. We were the fucked up people who were egocentric enough to kind of hit the problems of modernity before everybody else. Yeah. And it's like, no, no, I used to be like this. I meditate and dance and go in nature so I don't become a murder suicide. I used to meet normal people that used to do it for fun. And I'd be like, no, no, I have to do this. But now I think everyone's like me. Everyone's ADHD. Who here is not addicted to anything? You lying. No one. You see, there we go. No one. We're all addicted to something. We're all distracted. We're all ADHD. We're all in that more kind of addictive mode. The God-shaped hole is in all of us now. Yeah. We need that higher power. And don't make it me, whatever you do. I'm not saying be me. Be careful of the gurus. Yeah. I'm not saying be me. But you need to worship something. You need something that's bigger than you that you can put at the center of your life. And nature's a way into that. Movement, dance is a way into that. Community is a way into that. Okay. There's different ways into it. And I think the advantage of postmodernity is that we can try ayahuasca on a Tuesday and conscious dance on a Wednesday. And, we can try all these different potential gateways. Yeah. Now, the danger in that is we just pick the thing that suits us to the point where it deepens our neurosis and there's no surrender. My Aikido teacher, Sheehan William Smith, that's him with the Queen right there. Okay. I bet that's him, William Smith Sheehan. He used to say, Mark, without commitment, well, he's very English, say, without commitment, there is no real pleasure. And I'd say, what the fuck do you mean? I just had a threesome with two fucking Ukrainians. And he'd say, oh dear, Mark, you'll learn one day. You'll understand one day. And turns out he was right, that sense of surrender and commitment is important, though I do recommend the threesome with the Ukrainians. Okay, so the commitment, the surrender, not just the sort of like, hey, it's a new thing, novelty, woo, shiny new thing to him. I think I've squirted my existential load. I think we're done. I'm about there. Fucking hell. I don't know if any of that made sense. I had no plan. So I've got a slide. Do you want to see some slides? Would that be nice? It will recap This is made for the feral philosophy, which is I do this work with young men around weightlifting because that's what they like. Yes, we're all fucked. There's lots of stats on it. This is stuff around gender. We're in a decadent period. So history is cyclical, not linear. The modernity lie of progress is complete nonsense. I have the same model of history that the Indians, the Chinese, and almost every ancient people have, which is cyclical. We are in a declining period. Okay, so if you feel everything's fucked up, it is. This is what that means. I didn't talk about fragility. Short version, you're all a bunch of pussies compared to your grandparents. Okay. Okay. My granddad was on D-Day. He'd be embarrassed by how much of a wimp I am. Yes, these are the problems. Okay, these are the problems. Social connection is one of the answers. Economics I could talk about, but these are the 4 reconnections to keep us sane, right? I put it in the form of hugging because most of you are tree hugging fucking hippies. So it doesn't literally mean hugging, but it's the sense of connection and reconnection. So self-connection or self-regulation, community connection or co-regulation, eco-connection or eco-regulation, spirit meaning higher power connection or theo-regulation, my Greek colleague tells me. These are some made-up words so that you don't end up in any of the traps that are out there. Okay. So lots more I could say there, but I think that's good. Take what's useful and leave the rest. I probably said about 5 things that could get me cancelled, but never mind. And yeah, what are you taking away? Just it's actually useful feedback from me because I'm leaning into this area of meaning making to sort of expand from my actual expertise. Oh, embodiment. That's the only thing I really know about. If you want to study embodiment with us, it's not quite so chaotic, political, or philosophical, very practical. Quick plug, come train with us. Is that what we're meant to say? It's great. Tell your friends. There we go. If you've enjoyed it, you could like, I don't know, give a rating to a podcast or share a YouTube video with a friend or send me 1 million Bitcoins. I don't know.